Your local election headquarters. Here's Fred Childers with This Week in Louisiana Politics.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Fred Childers. I hope you're enjoying your weekend. I want to thank you for joining us for This Week in Louisiana Politics on your local election headquarters. Well, the permitless concealed carry law is now in effect in New Orleans. The law, which allows those 18 and older to conceal carry a handgun without a permit, has been in effect statewide for almost a month. Because of a pre-existing city ordinance, the law didn't apply for those in New Orleans until August. Jordan Lippincott spoke to businesses about how they are approaching this new law.
Here on Royal Street in the French Quarter, you may see signs like the one posted inside Angela King Gallery. The gallery's owner, Angela King, wants her customers to know despite the new permitless concealed carry law, they will not be able to have their handgun while browsing art. About a month ago, New Orleans officials announced they were opening a vocational technical school at the NOPD 8th District Station to create a firearm-free zone in a portion of the French Quarter.
I'm pleased that NOPD came up with it. How other business owners feel about it, I'm not exactly sure, except for none of us want people to be coming into our places of business with guns.
Plans to establish a school at the French Quarter police station seemingly came to a halt after the Attorney General voiced her concerns over the legality of it.
I hope that we are able to have it, and it's a good facility in the French Quarter anyway, even if it didn't have this nice benefit.
But for some, like Desiree Kruger, who works in the French Quarter, finds herself supporting the new law after being a victim of violent crime.
On defense now, I feel like the girl with the dragon tattoo, and I would have no remorse on defense.
Kruger says she thinks everyone has the right to defend themselves, permit or not.
Already, criminals have more access to guns than it seems normal people not committing crimes do. If that's what the people want in order to defend themselves, I say okay with that.
That was Jordan Lippincott reporting. A new task force is being formed to take a look at how the state can better monitor air pollution. The members of the task force are working to get advocacy groups and some industry representatives in the same room to look for answers. Recently, the legislature passed laws cracking down on community air monitoring that does not meet Department of Environmental Quality standards. Advocacy groups are looking to see what LDEQ can mandate and what companies would be willing to implement. And they have to find out how much different methods will cost.
We hope that this task force will look at how DEQ can install monitors or require the facilities when they permit the facilities and permit the air pollution, that they will require monitors.
LDEQ already has several air monitoring sensors across the state's industrial areas. The task force will meet at least 2 more times to develop a report to present to the legislature before the next session. The University of New Orleans is facing major layoffs and changes on the horizon. This comes after a budget shortfall of millions of dollars was found. Mallory Smith brings us the latest.
Major changes are headed to UNO after administrators uncovered a multi-million-dollar deficit brought on by a significant drop in enrollment and now a lack of federal funding once allocated during COVID.
And when those funds went away, it became apparent that we did have a gap between our current student enrollment and the tuition revenues that we were receiving and our budgeted expenditures.
Soon, the university will get rid of 70 positions, but Johnson says only 9 people will actually be laid off. The rest of the positions were not actually fulfilled due to some employees quitting or not wanting to return. Meanwhile, Milneburg Hall, the home to several departments, will be decommissioned by December.
By taking one big building offline, it both saves money and helps us to redirect people to better spaces that we can invest in appropriately.
Administrators are laying out a plan that would reduce the university's budget by 15% and the athletic department by 25% by the end of next fiscal year. But the logistics on where and what would get cut are unclear.
I'm really trusting my colleagues to make the best decisions for their unit, so I really can't speak for our athletic director. I've asked him to formulate a budget and to operate within that budget, and it's up to him.
Nearly 20 years ago, UNO's enrollment was more than double what it is now, with over 6,000 students enrolled last fall.
Students are always going to be the center of our world. That's why we are always here. So we've really been taking steps at the same time to prioritize policies that would make sure that our students have the best experience that they can while they're at the University of New Orleans.
Mallory Smith, WGNO News.
Well, school is back in session come next week for most parishes, and State Superintendent Cade Brumley is urging schools to recommit to what he calls assertive discipline action. In a letter, Brumley says disruptions are hindering teachers and students, claiming disciplinary action will create a safe and orderly environment. Some of his actions include removing disruptive students from classrooms and even placing some students in alternative schools. He says this is all aimed at improving the school experience. And new laws are going into effect today or this week, and some will have an impact on the new school year. Capitol reporter Shannon Hecht brings us an overview of what has changed.
There are new laws going into effect that will impact the upcoming school year. Here's a list of just a few that parents should be aware of. One new law requires that cell phones be stowed away during the entire school day, with some exceptions. The Board of Elementary and Secondary Education will review a policy created by the Department of Education this month. Reasons for mandatory expulsion have been extended to 6th grade and older if they bring a gun, a large knife, or any illegal controlled substance to school. Another law requires information about children opting out of required vaccinations to be readily available and provided to parents. Going into effect is also the law banning teachers from talking about or allowing classroom discussions about gender identity and sexual orientation. The Given Name Act also requires students to use the name and pronouns on their birth certificate unless they're given permission from their parents. If a teacher refuses to use a different name for a student, the child can change classes. There has been additional funding given to the Steve Carter Education Program and high-dosage tutoring to help children who are not meeting reading and math requirements. The Department of Education tells me that they're putting together a legislative guide for parents so they can look at all of the new laws and know what they need to do moving forward. For your local election headquarters, I'm Shannon Hecht.
Well, 158 years ago, dozens of African Americans were massacred in New Orleans. And on the anniversary, Tuesday, the city apologized. The city and the Plessy and Ferguson Initiative unveiled a plaque at the site of the massacre, which is now the Roosevelt Hotel. In 1866, it was the Mechanics' Institute, where a group of about 200 freedmen gathered there for a constitutional convention about their rights. They were fired upon at the order of the mayor and sheriff at the time.
As the superintendent of police of the city of New Orleans, I unequivocally apologize to the black community of this city and to every resident of this city.
Now, if you're ever in New Orleans and want to see the plaque in person, it's located across the street from the Roosevelt Hotel on Roosevelt Way. Well, 3 candidates are vying for the open seat on the Public Service Commission. Our Shannon Hecht will let you take a look at who you're voting for next.
This is your local election headquarters.
All right, well, people of South Louisiana will vote for a new public service commissioner after Craig Green announced his resignation. 3 candidates are in the race for the board that regulates your utilities. Capitol reporter Shannon Hecht brings us a look into those campaigns.
The Public Service Commission regulates utilities like electricity and water. They have oversight over what companies are charging you and how they manage their grid. In the race are Jean-Paul Cousson, Julie Quinn, and Nick Laborde. Cousson is a state senator and previously served in the House for 8 years. He says with major investments in the state coming from the current administration, he wants to help make the state more attractive for people to move to.
Basically, we have to work with them to grow the supply to meet the demand without the costs overburdening our everyday consumer.
Another Republican in the race is former state senator Julie Quinn. She says her experience in the legislature allowed her to be a conservative voice without being divisive. She's for expanding into alternative energy sources, but says it can't be done too quickly.
The rate at which it's being forced upon us is not sustainable, but I certainly think there's a place for all of those alternative energy sources just at a reasonable pace.
Neither Republicans have gotten the endorsement from the LA GOP yet. On the other side of the aisle, Nick Laborde has gotten the stamp of approval from the Louisiana Democrats. Laborde comes from a long line of politicians, but this would be his first elected office. With summers getting hotter and hurricanes always on the horizon, Laborde wants to put the pressure on companies to harden their grid without putting the cost on consumers.
I'm going to work to try to make energy pay more, to invest in reform and accountability and sustainability so that we can do things that over the long term help our grid, reduce the need to repair and rebuild, and hopefully just make a difference for working people.
With the open seat, there are 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans currently on the commission, so this seat could be pivotal for regulatory changes in the state. For your local election headquarters, I'm Shannon Hecht.
District Judge Donald Johnson ruled that 2 of the 3 candidates vying to serve on the Louisiana Supreme Court may remain in the running for the seat after their candidacy was challenged. First Circuit Court of Appeal Chief Judge John Michael Guidry, Second Circuit Appellate Judge Marcus Hunter, and Louisiana Housing Corporation Chief of Staff Leslie Ricard Chambers are running in the Supreme Court's recently redrawn 2nd District. The plaintiff said in the filing that Chambers lives outside the judicial district and Hunter failed to file state income taxes in 3 of the last 5 years, a requirement to run for the post under state law. As we head into the big presidential election this year, there are not enough workers to run the polls in Louisiana. The job is vital, overseeing the democratic process. Alexandra Meacham checked into the numbers.
If we don't have enough poll workers for our elections, then we can't have an election.
Known as certified commissioners, they are members of a community that work to make sure local elections run smoothly and correctly. It's an important role that demands time and focus.
It's a very long day, and they take their job very seriously.
Clerk of Court Jill Sessions says Bossier Parish currently has 579 certified poll workers, with 50 new applicants since April. She says her office has seen more success compared to other parts of the state, especially South Louisiana, where many poll workers never returned after being displaced because of hurricanes.
We're very lucky to have great certified, qualified poll workers in Bossier Parish. So please be patient because this presidential election coming up, it's going to be very heated, I'm sure.
DeSoto Parish Clerk of Court Lisa Burson says they have 355 certified commissioners. However, that number may not be final because some may be deceased or want to remove themselves before Election Day. A similar situation in Caddo, where Clerk of Court Mike Spence says they've increased the amount of certified commissioners from 900 up to 1,200. However, that amount does not actually turn out on Election Day. Clerks' offices will soon start training programs to certify new workers.
We do on-hand training. So if we have a class that day, we certify them from the top to the bottom as far as testing and hands-on with machines.
Poll workers earn a paycheck too. Parishes across Louisiana pay between $250 and $350 a day.
Up next, millions of dollars headed to Louisiana farmers treated unfairly when applying for federal loans to stay afloat. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This is your local election headquarters.
Welcome back. The acting director of the Secret Service says his agency failed its mission. He testified on Capitol Hill weeks after the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. Washington correspondent Vinay Simlot explains what we've learned so far.
The acting director of the Secret Service says he can't defend the planning. He says he doesn't know why the roof the shooter used wasn't secure. He also said Secret Service agents didn't know local law enforcement spotted the shooter on the roof moments before the shooting.
What I saw made me ashamed.
Shame, the acting director of the Secret Service says, for the failures
What happened?
that led to a gunman firing at former President Donald Trump.
I think this was a failure of imagination, a failure to challenge our own assumptions.
The acting director says he laid on the roof less than 150 yards from where the former president was speaking, the place where Thomas Matthew Crooks tried to take the former president's life.
I could not, and I will not, and I cannot understand why there was not better coverage, or at least somebody looking at that roof line.
Investigators say about 30 minutes before the shooting, local law enforcement shared a photo of Crooks in a group chat. Moments before the shooting, one confronted Crooks on the roof, but the acting director says his agents didn't know this was happening.
It is troubling to me that we did not get that information as quickly as we should have.
Republicans accuse the acting director of deflecting blame to local police.
But we're still not getting straight answers. But somebody's got to be fired.
I have lost sleep over that for the last 17 days, just like you have.
Somebody.
The acting director says a Secret Service counter sniper was able to shoot and kill the shooter within seconds of him firing at the president. Investigators say they believe he got off 8 shots.
Well, Louisiana farmers could soon be getting millions of dollars for enduring various forms of discrimination when applying for federal loans. Congressman Troy Carter, a Democrat, you see there, he's from New Orleans, he announced this week the money comes from the Discrimination Financial Assistance Program, and more than $77 million will go to more than 1,200 Louisiana recipients. Congressman Carter, who helped create the program and then he voted for it, said, quote, "It's an opportunity to create long overdue equity for farmers left behind due to decades of discriminatory practices." In a move to boost safety and privacy for kids online, Senator Bill Cassidy also authored a bill called the Children and Teens Online Protection Act. The Senate voted 91-3 Tuesday to pass a pair of bills marking the most significant congressional action in decades to regulate social media's impact on children and teens. The bills still need to pass the House, where lawmakers are on a 6-week summer recess until September 9th.
One provision I really like, current online protection just prevents social media firms from gathering data on kids 13 to 0. This extends that to 17. They cannot track or otherwise obtain data on those who are 17 and below.
Cassidy says his version of the bill also bans targeted advertising to children and teens. With first responders throughout the U.S. facing higher rates of PTSD and suicide, Democrats and Republicans are working together to provide some support. They say a dedicated hotline will guarantee mental health services to our first responders. Washington correspondent Basil John reports.
When you're in danger, first responders are first on the scene to help, but the work brings along a lot of stress.
It's no surprise that the first responders face higher rates of behavioral health conditions.
New York Democrat Senator Kirsten Gillibrand says recent studies found law enforcement and firefighters are more likely to die by suicide than in the line of duty.
This is something I think people are hearing about all across the country.
To combat this, she and Missouri Republican Senator Josh Hawley introduced a bill to expand mental health services for first responders.
This bill would provide those resources to local first responders. It would also set up a hotline where they can call if they are struggling.
So there'll be a specific call center dedicated to first responders.
According to Blue Health, more than 120 first responders in New York took their own lives since 2018. Across the country, more than 1,400.
We have seen suicide rates among first responders and law enforcement just skyrocket in recent years. Skyrocket.
Andrea Edmiston with the National Association of Police Organizations says there is a lack of counselors and therapists who understand the difficulties law enforcement go through. But this bill would change that.
Individuals embedded within the organization that officers can trust, that they are willing to share their experiences with, is vitally important to addressing their mental health and wellness.
And Gillibrand and Hawley are confident this will pass. Reporting in Washington, I'm Basil John.
Up next, we'll have a look at the week ahead on your local election headquarters. Stay with us.
This is your local election headquarters.
Welcome back. Looking ahead to the coming week, on Monday, Department of Revenue Secretary Richard Nelson will be speaking at the Baton Rouge Press Club. That'll happen at noon. On Wednesday, the House and Senate Insurance Committees will meet to talk about auto insurance at 9. Also Wednesday, the Senate Judiciary A and B committees will meet to discuss trucking and fraudulent activities. They meet at 9. Thank you so much for joining us for This Week in Louisiana Politics. I'm Fred Childers. Stay informed, and I'll see you next Sunday right here on your local election headquarters.